Welcome to our deep dive. Today we're tackling a river that looks totally fine on the surface, but it's hiding a dirty little secret. You ready to get trashy with me?
I'm all in. Trash talk is my love language.
Haha, nice. So we're heading to Taiwan, following the Tamsui River all the way to the ocean.
The Tamsui is fascinating. It looks pristine for miles, then bam, piles of garbage. It really shows you how we can be fooled by appearances.
Exactly. We're going to be using a study on Taiwan's waste to help us unpack it all.
Awesome.
We'll be looking at a 2018 report by Greenpeace and the Society of Wilderness.
They spent a year surveying Taiwan's coastline.
Yep. And we'll also be diving into how Tamsui University is using this research to get students out on the water and learning about the problem firsthand.
Really cool program.
But before we get to all that, why are we zeroing in on this one particular river? What makes the Tamsui so special?
The Tamsui is a major contributor to ocean plastic pollution. It's one of the big ones. And there's a recent study that found that 80% of all the plastic in the ocean comes from just 1,000 rivers worldwide.
80%. That's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So understanding the Tamsui helps us understand a global problem, right?
Right. You can think of it as a microcosm of a much larger issue.
Okay. Makes sense. But what makes the Tamsui part of that 1%? Is it just a lot of trash, or is there something else going on?
It's a bit of both. But that Greenpeace study I mentioned really lays it all out. They walked over 12 kilometers of coastline, visiting 121 different spots, and they found over 150,000 bags of trash.
150,000 bags. It's like 13 bags every 100 meters.
You got it.
Whoa, that's not just an eyesore anymore. That's a serious problem.
Exactly. It impacts everything, the environment, the economy, even human health.
What kind of trash are we talking about?
It's mostly stuff that takes forever to decompose, plastic bottles, bags, fishing nets. This stuff can stick around for hundreds of years.
So, like, if we were to make a top 5 trash offenders list, what would be on it?
There's another study by Walther and others. They looked at 12 years of data from 541 beach cleanups, and the usual suspects were all there. Plastic bags, bottle caps, disposable tableware, fishing gear, and straws.
So basically all the stuff we use every day.
Pretty much.
It makes you think twice about what you toss in the bin, right?
It really does.
All right. Let's zoom back in on the Tamsui River, this trash heat map that the Society of Wilderness created. I'm really curious about that. How did they actually make it?
Well, they combine high-tech mapping with some good old-fashioned field work. You can picture it, cyclists riding along the riverbanks, carefully noting down what they see and how much of it there is.
Like a trash census.
Haha, pretty much.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, other teams were walking along the coastline near the river's mouth, doing the same kind of inventory.
That makes sense for all the trash you can actually see. But what about the stuff that's hidden? Or the trash that builds up over time? How do they measure that?
That's where things get really interesting. They picked a section of the riverbank, cleared away all the trash, and then every day they measured how much new trash piled up.
So they were tracking the trash flow. Clever.
It was. And to figure out how much trash could actually fit in a given volume, they weighed and measured all the trash they collected.
So after all that work, what did their trash heat map actually show?
Well, the study found that 82% of the Tamsui River's banks were actually trash-free.
82% trash-free. I thought we said this was one of the worst offenders.
It is, but there's a twist. While most of the river was clean, 9% of the riverbank held 90% of the river's total trash.
Wait, so even though it seems like pollution everywhere, it's actually concentrated in just a few spots.
Exactly, and we're talking about a lot of trash. We're talking 168,000 liters. That's like 12,000 garbage bags.
Wow. So even though it looks pretty clean, it's hiding a lot of trash. And it's mostly in very specific areas, mainly around bridges and certain stretches of the riverbank.
Yep.
So it's a targeted problem.
You could say that. And that's actually good news, because it means we can focus our efforts on those specific areas.
I'm seeing how this data could be really useful.
Yeah.
But let's get specific. What kind of trash did they find in those hotspots?
It was a lot of the same stuff we talked about earlier. Plastic bottles and containers, bags, and all that disposable foodware, like cups and containers and straws.
The usual suspects.
Yep, down at the estuary, it was even worse. Plastic bottles made up 80% of the trash, then styrofoam at 77%, and hard plastic fishing floats at 60%.
Okay, we've talked about how much trash there is, but I'm curious about that area they cleared off to measure how much new trash piled up every day.
Yeah.
What did those numbers tell us?
Well, every 100 meters of riverbank gets about 190 pieces of new trash every day.
Every single day. That's great.
That adds up to about 3 kilos of trash,
Yeah.
taking up 19 liters of space.
Just imagine that happening day after day after day. So what does this tell us about the bigger picture?
It's a reminder that even a river that seems clean can be a major source of pollution.
Mm.
And it's not just about what we see on the surface. We need to understand where our trash goes and what happens to it. But how do we turn this data into action? That's where things get really interesting. It all comes back to the idea of ocean citizenship, you know? It's not just about knowing about the ocean. It's about feeling connected to it and wanting to protect it.
I love that phrase, ocean citizenship.
Yeah.
So besides not littering, what does that actually look like? How can people become ocean citizens?
Well, think about the choices we make every day. Like what we buy, how we get rid of our trash. Every choice is a chance to make a difference.
Yeah, I can see that.
And you know what? Activities like water sports can actually help us feel more connected to the ocean.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Are we talking about the Tamsui River again?
Yeah,
And that program at Tamsui University?
exactly. They've created this program that combines ocean education with canoeing on the river.
So it's not just a fun day out on the water. They're actually learning about the river while they're paddling.
Yep. They're learning about its history, the ecosystem, the threats it faces from pollution, and they're actually seeing those trash hotspots we talked about up close and personal.
Wow, that must be pretty impactful, seeing it firsthand instead of just looking at pictures.
It is, and they're also learning about the local history and culture and even art connected to the river. So it's a really holistic experience.
I like that. They're engaging their hearts and minds, not just their heads.
Right, because protecting the environment isn't just a scientific issue, it's a human issue too.
Okay, I'm sold on the canoe program. But can it really make a difference? I mean, can something like this actually help solve a global problem like ocean plastic pollution?
That's the million-dollar question. And while canoeing might not be the answer everywhere, the ideas behind this program can definitely be scaled up.
Okay, so what are those key takeaways? How can we apply this to other communities?
I'd say the first takeaway is that hands-on learning is incredibly powerful. It could be anything that gets people directly involved with the environment, like canoeing or beach cleanups or citizen science projects. When people experience something firsthand, they're more likely to care about it and to want to protect it.
Makes sense. What's the second takeaway?
The second takeaway is about making it local. The Tamsui University program focuses on the river that flows through their community. So it's real for the students. It's something they can connect to.
Right. It's about bringing those global issues home and showing people how it affects their own lives in their own backyard.
Exactly. And the third takeaway is the power of storytelling and emotional connection. We can't just throw facts and figures at people. We need to engage their hearts as well as their minds. Think art history, personal reflection, all of that helps people connect on a deeper level. And it inspires action that goes beyond just a sense of duty.
I'm really digging this.
Yeah.
But has the Tamsui program actually had any results? Like, have they seen any real changes because of it?
Oh, yeah. They've seen some incredible results.
Mm.
The students are not only learning about the river and pollution, they're becoming advocates for change. They're organizing river cleanups, giving presentations to schools, even talking to their families about reducing plastic use.
That's fantastic. So they're not just learning about it. They're actually doing something about it.
Exactly. And what's really exciting is that other universities and schools are starting to take notice. They're reaching out to Tamsui University, wanting to learn from them and adapt their model to their own communities.
Wow. That's amazing. It's like a ripple effect.
It is. But of course, there are always challenges when it comes to scaling up a program like this.
Like what?
Well, funding is always a big one. It can be tough to get funding for environmental programs. But the good news is that more and more people are starting to realize that investing in the environment is essential. It's not just a nice to have, it's a must have.
Yeah. A healthy environment is essential for everything.
Yeah.
A healthy economy, public health, you name it.
Exactly. And that's a message that's resonating with more and more people.
Good. But even with funding, there must be other challenges. What about adapting it to different communities and different environments?
Well, that's actually one of the great things about this model. It's super adaptable. Sure, canoeing might not work everywhere, but those core principles, hands-on learning, local context storytelling, those can be applied anywhere. You could have a beach cleanup with an art component, or a community garden that teaches local history. The possibilities are endless.
I like that. It's about being creative and finding what works for each place.
Mm.
Okay, I'm really inspired by all this. But let's go back to that statistic for a minute.
Mm.
About 80% of ocean plastic coming from just 1,000 rivers. It's a little scary, but also kind of hopeful, don't you think?
It is. It's scary because it shows how big the problem is. But it's also hopeful because it gives us a clear target. Imagine if we could focus our efforts on those 1,000 rivers.
Like a global cleanup effort.
Exactly. We could make a huge difference.
But besides copying the Tamsui program, what else can we do? And those specific types of trash they found, do those give us any clues about how to tackle this at the source?
Absolutely. Think about it. Plastic bottles and containers, bags, disposable foodware. It's all part of our throwaway culture. We need to move away from single-use plastics and start using more sustainable materials.
So it's about changing how we think about plastic, not just cleaning up the mess we've already made.
Right. It's about changing our habits and making better choices. And that goes for individuals, communities, and governments.
Before we wrap up this part of the deep dive, any downsides to this program? Any potential drawbacks or unintended consequences?
That's a good question. One thing to consider is that by focusing on those really obvious trash hotspots, we might miss some of the less visible but equally important forms of pollution. It's important to remember that plastic pollution is complex. It comes from lots of different sources, and it has lots of different impacts.
So it's about keeping the bigger picture in mind.
Right. Now, before we move on to the last part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with a question to ponder.
Okay, hit me.
We've talked about the journey of trash from the Tamsui River to the ocean, but what about the journey of ideas? How can we take the lessons we've learned from this research in this program and spread them to other communities around the world?
That's a great question. And the perfect way to transition to the last part of our deep dive, we'll explore the ripple effects of this research and how we can all be part of the solution. Stay with us. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the Tamsui River and its trashy journey to the ocean. Before the break, we were talking about how to spread the lessons from the Tamsui and get other communities involved. What do you think are the best ways to do that?
It's about turning what we've learned here into global action. And there are a few key ways we can do that. First, sharing the data and the methods they used. That trash heat map approach is a powerful tool. Other rivers could use it too.
Yeah. Imagine researchers and citizen scientists all over the world using the same methods to track trash. It'd be like a global trash map.
Exactly. We could create a huge database to guide cleanup efforts and inform policies. But it's not just about data. We also need to share those personal stories.
Oh, right. Like those students paddling down the Tamsui, learning about the river and becoming ocean citizens. Those stories can really inspire people.
Exactly. And we need to get the word out through documentaries, articles, social media campaigns. The more people understand the problem, the more likely they are to be part of the solution.
And speaking of solutions, we talked about Tamsui University's canoe program. Have they had any other groups reach out wanting to try something similar?
Yeah, definitely. Other universities and schools have contacted them.
Yeah.
They want to adapt the program to their own communities. And remember, it doesn't have to be canoeing. The main thing is hands-on learning, local focus, and storytelling.
Right. It could be a beach cleanup with an art project or a community garden with a history lesson. There's so many possibilities.
Exactly. But let's be real. Changing behavior on a global scale, that's a big challenge.
What are some of the biggest roadblocks?
Well, funding is always a big one. It's not always easy to get money for environmental projects. But the good news is people are starting to realize that protecting the environment is good for the economy, too.
Yeah. It's an investment in our future.
Right. And we need to overcome that feeling of being overwhelmed by the problem. You know, people see those pictures of giant garbage patches in the ocean and they think, what difference can I make?
I know what you mean. It's easy to feel powerless.
But the Tamsui River shows us that even small actions can make a difference. Remember, 80% of ocean plastic comes from just 1,000 rivers. If we focus on those rivers, we can turn things around.
So it's about giving people hope and empowering them to act.
Exactly. It all comes back to that idea of ocean citizenship. We're all connected to the ocean no matter where we live.
What happens in the Tamsui River affects us all.
And what we do in our own communities can have an impact around the world.
We've covered so much in this deep dive. It's been amazing to see how research can lead to solutions and how people are coming together to tackle this problem. But before we go, any advice for our listeners? What can we do right now to make a difference?
The biggest thing you can do is reduce your own plastic use. Every little bit helps.
Absolutely. What else?
Support organizations that are fighting plastic pollution, whether it's through donations, volunteering, or just spreading the word.
It's about putting our money where our mouth is and speaking up.
Right. Be an advocate for change. Talk to your friends and family. Write to your elected officials. Let them know you care about this issue.
So it's about taking that ocean citizenship to the next level and making our voices heard.
Exactly. We can all be part of the solution.
This deep dive has been really inspiring. It's shown me that even though we face huge challenges, there's always hope. People are working hard to find solutions, and we can all be part of that. So thank you for joining us on this journey down the Tamsui River. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.